This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Having a list gives you some control over and above what the normal day-to-day is. And if you have a relationship with the list and not just a list, then you have influence. And that is very powerful.
Hi, my name is Igor Kheifets, and this is the List Building Lifestyle, the only podcast which delivers cutting-edge conversion strategies from the online trenches straight to your earbuds. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. I also invite you to grab a free copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. And now, once again, it's time to claim your list building lifestyle. Welcome back to another edition of the List Building Lifestyle with your host, Igor Kheifets. And today, my guest is the author of 80/20 Sales and Marketing, Perry Marshall. Perry, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on List Building Lifestyle, and I love the name of your show because I don't know how many people have a lifestyle because they have a list, but it's a lot. A list is a really important thing. So, you're in the zone of the important stuff here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much the only thing that worked for me. I mean, I tried blogging and all sorts of different kind of methods, and list building was the only thing that really kind of clicked. And it's funny because I remember watching the sales video by Ryan Dice, and he was talking about how he gave his friend, gifted him with like golf clubs or something that cost $2,700, and he paid for those golf clubs with just one blast to his list. I can clearly see that picture in my mind. That was the moment when I said, damn it, I got to have a list. I want to be able to send an email and just make a bunch of money. You know what I mean? So,
and look, a list in addition to, whatever normal thing happens in your business that, if you have a yogurt shop, then there's foot traffic and there's people coming in and out all the time. But having a list gives you some control over and above what the normal day-to-day is. And if you have a relationship with the list and not just a list, then you have influence. And that is very powerful.
Well, yeah, and authority. I mean, that's the one thing you have a lot of in the marketplace today, and that is authority. And that's one of the main topics in your book as well, the 80/20 Sales and Marketing. And this is pretty much where I want to take this conversation. And, to get started, do you mind walking us through the principle, the 80/20 principle? How does that work? Where does it come from? And how did you find out about it?
Yeah, so I was on an airplane just the other day, and I had these two interesting people on either side of me. The guy on my left was a sales manager, and the lady on my right was a writing teacher. Now, the sales manager on my left, 80/20 came up in the conversation, and the sales manager had actually read Richard Koch's original book, The 80/20 Principle. And the lady on my right had never heard of it, even though she was clearly a very bright woman. Of course, she wasn't a business person either. And I explained, I said, 80% of the writing comes from 20% of your writing students. Because she taught expository writing, I think, and I started explaining 80% of the traffic runs on 20% of the roads in your town. And not only that, 80% of the 80% of the traffic runs on 20% of the 20%. And the guy's like chiming in. He's like, oh yeah, and hopefully most marketers and business people, knock on wood, have heard of the 80/20 principle, but I know that most people really don't get it. And I know this because I talk to people every day, but most people, they're actually like me. And I remember when I was a sales manager, back when I had a Dilbert Cube job, somebody was talking about the 80/20 principle, and I printed out a sales report in QuickBooks, and I literally took my calculator and I just went down and I started adding them up. And I'm like, well, I'll be darned. That's true. 80% of our business is coming from 20% of these customers. And the next thought I had was, that guy Dimitri, who calls me like about once a month and chews up all this time, he doesn't buy very much stuff from me, and like he gets more than his fair share of my time, and I should probably just stop selling stuff to him. But I didn't stop selling stuff to him, and I didn't really think about it anymore. And 80/20 at that time was just a rear view mirror confirmation of something that we already know is true, which is that some customers are bigger than others. And that's really all I thought it was. But it's not just that. It's so much more than that. And so here's what happened. So a few years later, Ken McCarthy, who has a really good track record of recommending great books, everybody's telling you to read a book, right, Igor?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My Kindle is exploding. I got 10 books I'm reading right now, 100 more that's on the list, and every day there's someone telling me about a great book. I just had we're just recording earlier today, and my producer Jonathan was like, "Dude, you have this employee problem. There's a great book, and I want to give it to you." And I'm thinking, awesome, that's great. I'm really grateful, but damn it, when am I going to read it? I don't have the time.
Oh yeah, well, and so it gets to where unless you hear 3 or 4 people tell you that a book is really awesome, you'll probably never actually read it, even if you do buy it, or it is on your Kindle, or I don't know, someday I'll be sitting around with nothing to do and maybe, right? But anyway, Ken had a great track record, and he said, oh, you've got to read The 80/20 Principle by Richard Koch. And so I pick it up and I read it. And I got to page 14, and Richard just mentioned something. It was almost a throwaway remark. And it sent me down this whole rabbit trail. My mind set on fire. And what he said, and I'm not sure everybody's going to relate to this, but I'll slow down and explain it so you can kind of get it. He said 80/20 is closely related to chaos and fractals and complex systems. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, you lost me at that point.
Now, I really need to stop and tell you this. So here's what it is. So if you ask me, how long is the coastline of California? And I say 1,500 miles or 1,000 miles, whatever it is, as a crow flies, that would be an accurate answer. But there's actually not any one answer to that question. If you drove your car all the way up the coast, instead of being 1,000 miles, it might be 1,500 or 2,000 because it winds all around. And if you walked the coastline, it'd probably be 4,000 miles. And, if a dog walked the coastline even tighter, it might be 8,000 miles. And, if a bacteria walked, it would be like a million miles. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, not really, to be honest.
Okay, because it's curvy, it's wiggly. So
right.
So the edge of that coast. There's the little peninsula, and then there's the little inlet, and and we could get down to like literally the rocks where the wave comes in, or the tide goes up and the tide goes down, and it changes. So there isn't any one answer to how long is the coast of California. And this is actually a huge truth about how people spend money. Okay. Or here's another example. You have the side of a mountain and it's full of snow, and somebody claps his hands, kind of like you did just before we started to give the signal to your sound guy. Somebody could clap their hands and there could be an avalanche because that one tiny trigger, all of a sudden, it destabilized something. Well, that is an 80/20 moment when that avalanche suddenly crashes down and goes rolling down the mountain. Or this guy named Ed Lawrence was trying to model weather on a computer about 50 years ago, and it was really going good. And he's like, well, okay, I got the humidity, I got the temperature, and look, I got this hurricane, and wow, this is amazing. I'm going to we're going to have really accurate weather forecasts. And then the next day he comes in and he changes the tiniest little thing at the beginning of a simulation. And 6 months later, the weather's completely different than it was just like one tiny decimal place. And that's called the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect says that a butterfly's wings could cause a hurricane 6 months from now, somewhere, maybe. And it's so sensitive to the beginning that you don't even know. And now this is a huge secret to finding efficiency in sales, because in sales and marketing, you can actually find the butterfly wings if you know where to look. Okay. And this is so powerful. And my goal with people that I talk to in interviews is, if I can get a person to see 80-20 everywhere they look, then I've succeeded, because it is literally everywhere around you. So here's what 80-20 says. 80-20 says that most cause and effect is not proportional. So customers are not equal. Customer service complaints are not equal. Product defects are not equal. Days of the week are not equal. Tables in your restaurant are not equal. That in all these things, 20% of the effort produces 80% of the results, and then the other 80% of the effort only produces 20% of the results. And if you look at it intelligently, you can start to see the patterns, and you can see where there's huge leverage. Now, what Richard said, when Richard said what he said, I suddenly knew, hey, wait a minute, that means there's an 80-20 inside every 80-20. So if you look at the tree in your front yard, it's got a branching pattern, but then I can zoom in and I can look at a branch, and I can zoom in and look at twigs, and I can zoom in and look at leaves. I could zoom in and look at the veins on the leaves. I could zoom in and look at the veins in the leaves, and it's branching. Okay, well, 80-20 is like that too. And so, oh my goodness, so that means if 20% of my effort produces 80% of my income, that means 20% of my effort produces 80% of 80%. So that means 4% of what you do is 64% of your income. In fact, 1% of what you do produces 50% of your income. So that means that how much money you made last year, half of it came from 3 days of something you did.
This is mind-blowing.
It is. Half of your income came from 3 days of last year. Now, people on salary will almost never see this. If you're on straight commission or you're an entrepreneur, you live by your wits, you're like, oh yeah, I had that one conversation with that one guy and it opened up that door, and then I got into this whole new thing, and it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And then I had this other project, I spent 4 months on it, we got nowhere.
It's funny. It's like exactly what happened last year for me. We're doing okay. Then something happened. We're stuck. One tweak, bam, we doubled. Then 4 months, nothing happens. Then again, one tweak, bam, we double again. So it is incredible. You're absolutely correct.
And that's that avalanche effect, right? No, like most mountains, like, hey, make the snow go down the mountain. I mean, you could walk it, you could get a shovel, you could walk all over the place, you would accomplish nothing, right? But if you go to the right mountain that's sitting in just the right set of conditions, you just throw a little stick of dynamite and like the whole thing comes down. And that's what you're trying to do in sales. So I want to tell you a fun story. So one of my colleagues, John Paul Mendoza, he dropped out of high school when he was 17 in Denver, and he hitchhiked to Las Vegas, and he became a professional gambler. And by the way, his mother was lighting candles for him like every morning at mass. I mean, can you imagine your kid doing this?
Well, I hope Erica doesn't do it when she grows up. I mean, I hope that she markets, or at least she goes, and saves lives or something.
Living on the edge, right? So he'd read all these gambling books and he was fascinated with it. So off he goes. All right. So after a few months of this, he's like, man, this is harder than I thought. And he meets this guy in a gambling bookstore with all these gambling books, and they strike up a conversation. And turns out this guy is a professional gambler. He's lived there for years. He's got all these other kind of shady businesses on the side. This sounds like a really great adventure for John. And so it's like, hey, could you teach me how to do this? And he's like, well, for a percentage of your winnings, yeah, I could do that. So they shake on it. And then he goes, jump in the Jeep, John. We're going for a ride. Okay. So they jump in the Jeep. They're going down the road. John says, okay, how do I win more poker games? And the guy goes, you have to find marks. Marks are people who are going to lose. Like, you don't go out and find other professional gamblers. You find like some guy who just got here from Wichita, Kansas with his grandmother's inheritance money, and you play poker with him. And he goes, well, how do I find marks? And he goes, here, I'll show you. And they pull into a parking lot of a strip club, and they go into the strip club, and there's women and there's rock and roll and there's people drinking, and it's loud and it's crazy. And Rob sits down with John at one of the tables. He pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his jacket, and he opens the chamber, and then he closes it real fast under the table. He goes, ch-ch. It's called racking the shotgun. And he makes this noise, and all these kind of biker dudes turn around like, hey, what's that? And meanwhile, everybody else is drinking and women and everything. The club owner comes, and he says, hey, what's going on over here? And Rob goes, everything's just fine. Just teaching the lad a lesson. Don't worry about us. And then he says to John, did you see those dudes who turned around when they heard that noise in the middle of this noisy club? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, don't play poker with them because they're not marks. You play with everybody else. Now, everything you do in list building is racking the shotgun. So somebody sent an email. Some people opened it, some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. There was a Google ad. Some people searched and some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. Some people clicked on the ad, some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. Some people filled in the form on the website, some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. Some people got on the webinar and some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. Some people bought the thing, some people didn't. Rack the shotgun. Some people took the upsell also, others didn't. Rack the shotgun. On and on it goes, okay? Everything is racking the shotgun, and there's shotguns getting racked all the time, everywhere. You go throw a stick of dynamite on the side of a mountain and cause an avalanche. That's a rack the shotgun, okay? Everything is racking the shotgun. And the question is, are you paying attention? Now, here's the other thing. People think that list building and selling and marketing are a convincing people process, and they're not. Selling, marketing, and list building is an elimination process. It's a disqualification process. Who should not be on this list? Who should I not sell to? Who does not qualify? That's what you start with, because 80-20 says 80% of the people that you're looking at are probably worthless for whatever you're trying to do. And 80% of those people are only marginal. And that leaves you with 4%. And probably the 4% you can really get somewhere with. And guess what? 20% of the 4% are the ones that you really want, which means, you look at some big group of people, like you're at a trade show and there's all these people walking around, probably only 1 to 5% are actually the people that you want. So if you understand this, first of all, it gives you permission not to spend the rest of your life being a pushy salesperson. You don't have to do this anymore. Your job is to rack the shotgun and see who looks around and who doesn't. Now, in the club example, John's job was to eliminate the non-marks so that the marks were left. Now, he could have had some other deal in mind, like maybe they want to go into the desert and shoot skeet or something. Well, in that case, you'd take the people who did turn their heads. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes you're eliminating, or sometimes you're choosing, but whatever it is, you're going to have group A, group B. And this goes on and on all the time, all the time. And if you see this for what it is, your life just becomes infinitely easier.
Wow, this is such a different approach to the way most people preach list building and sales and marketing. They always talk about go for your ideal client, go for, just know your ideal client and go for that person, go where they hang out. And you're saying, no, you don't do that. You actually do the opposite. You just eliminate the people who don't fit the description. Is that right?
Well, certainly, if you know exactly where the ideal people are, then great. But even when you get to where the ideal people are, it's almost certain that 80% of them are still not for you, right? And so if you go into every situation going, who do I eliminate? It completely changes your posture of everything you're doing. So let me give you a couple of examples. So I have a website, isfbforme.com. Is FB for me. It stands for Is Facebook for me. And everybody could go there right now and answer 10 questions. It'll take you 30 seconds, maybe 60. And you answer 10 questions and it'll tell you on a point scale of 1 to 10, how appropriate is Facebook for my business. In fact, in the 80-20 book, I explain, if it gives you a score of 10, then Facebook's your number one medium. If it gives you a 9, then Facebook's probably your number 2 medium. If it gives you a 3, it probably means it's like the 7th, and it's kind of like that. Well, why did we do this? Well, when our Facebook book, because I wrote a book with Tom Malash and Keith Kranz called Ultimate Guide to Facebook Advertising. And when that book first came out, Facebook was not nearly as hot as it is now for advertisers. In fact, it was kind of a dog. It was like, this is a really interesting little toy, and some people can make this work, but most people can't. And when the book came out, we didn't want a bunch of people writing 1-star reviews on Amazon going, man, these guys promised me the moon and this sucks. And so we made this quiz. And the job of the quiz was to eliminate everybody that wasn't a fit. And we said, if you don't score at least a 7, then Facebook is not a high priority for you. And if you don't score at least a 5, then don't even read this book. Well, it worked. We got really great reviews for the book. And I felt it was necessary. Look, Facebook is really great for 15% of all these people. Now, what's happened in the meanwhile is now Facebook is really hot and it's working great and it works for lots of people. But the quiz still applies. In fact, we just modified the quiz and we changed the criteria a little bit, and the quiz still tells you. But the whole idea of the quiz was to push most people away. Now, here's what happens when you push most people away. If you come up to somebody in person and you say, I probably can't help you, and I can ask you 3 or 4 questions and find out for sure. Do you mind if I just, most people say, okay, fine, and they'll answer 3 or 4 questions. Well, if they see you doing that and you're pushing most people away, then the 1 time out of 3 or the 1 time out of 5 when you say, oh, we should definitely talk, everybody can see the credibility behind that. You have much more authority, much more power to attract the people who are a fit. And so you can see us do that. It is Facebook for me, is fbforme.com. You can also see us do that with Google AdWords, is awforme.com. And the AdWords one, it actually ranks people on, is Google search ads for you? Is Google Display Network ads for you? And how competitive is AdWords in your industry and in your situation? Do you need to get a 9th degree black belt in AdWords, or would a yellow belt be good enough? And so I do this. Now, what I want people here's what Igor, I would really like your readers to do, as forward as it sounds. So I know there's tons of books out there. And I know everybody's got like 47 books on their Kindle that they didn't even read and all of that. I want you to read 80/20 Sales and Marketing. It's a fun book. It's easy to read. It will completely change the way you see the world. I never looked out the window the same after I understood 80/20. I never looked at a spreadsheet or a Google campaign or a mailing list. So this totally applies to mailing lists. I want you to read the book, because if you spend a couple hours of your life and you immerse yourself in this idea, it will get locked into your brain, and you will suddenly see 80/20s everywhere. You will see shotguns racking everywhere. Most people are blind. Most people are invisible. They can't see it. They don't hear it, but you do. And you see all of these shotguns racking all around you. You go, well, there's a buying signal. There's a buying signal. There's a buying signal. Now, when you get into lists, a list is a dynamic, throbbing, living thing. Okay, so first of all, for whatever your offer is, there's an 80/20, there's an 80/20 squared, there's an 80/20 cubed, there's a top 20%, there's a top 4%, there's a top 1%, there's a top 0.1%. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you change the criteria, that whole list changes. You have a list, and these people will gravitate towards offer A, but these other people will gravitate towards offer B. And you might find that, hey, inside my list, my one list, I actually have 10 lists here, or I actually have I have 100 lists here. I can rack the shotgun and I can pull out these sub lists of people. And the deeper and longer your relationship with those people, the more you can do that. And you can start to do some really clever alchemy with email and, of course, other forms of communication. And it's just incredibly powerful. And this is the real power of lists. It's not just having a list, it's segmenting the list.
Wow, this is I've been kind of quiet. Usually I interrupt my guests all the time, and with you I'm just sitting here taking notes. And to be honest, I knew of the 80/20 rule from a while ago. It really helped me in my business, but I only picked up the book recently when I decided to interview you, and kind of when I worked up the courage to do so, because obviously I've been following you around for like forever. So I believe it is quite an easy book to read. And I sort of blew through the first 3 chapters, I think, within 20 minutes. Very, very easy to read. Lots of pictures, lots of stories. Pictures and mental pictures, not as like a regular shotgun. You can clearly see it happening, right? So guys, I really recommend you pick up a copy at perrymarshall.com, because you can get it for a penny over there. Just pay shipping and handling. And the 80/20 rule will forever transform the way you do business, the way you build your list, the way you drive traffic. And Perry, before we end the episode, I just want to confess I am totally stealing the idea, and I'm creating Is Solo Ads Right for Me? Just so we're absolutely okay.
It is a great way to lead generate. I mean, so take this away. You could. So Is Solo Ads for Me? You could go to Is FB for Me or isawforme.com, steal the ideas, steal the format. It's a really great way to sell. I got an interesting comment. It was one of the first Amazon reviews of 80/20 sales and marketing. There's more than 300 now, but one of the very first ones, the guy said, so who should read this? Well, anybody who works for a living. And why is that? Well, because 80/20 applies, it applies to lists and, traffic and all that. Like in a Google campaign, I could spend 2 hours going through a Google account showing you all the 80/20s that show up. It's the ads, the keywords, most of the keywords are 95.5, by the way. But it also applies to your time management, your employees, your staff, to market research. And there's so many shortcuts. And if you go through life going, instead of not what can I do or what should I do, if you start every day with what shouldn't I do? What should I stop? And, some of us really need that because, I've got a great work ethic and I've got all these ideas and I'm a doer, and those are great characteristics. In fact, all those characteristics are like maybe the number one thing that'll get a person past $100,000 a year of income. But if you want to get to $1 million a year, you have to flip that upside down. If you're making $1 million a year, your first question is, what am I not doing today? What skill am I not developing? What idea am I not chasing? Like, I think you can make $100,000 a year just chasing every opportunity that comes your way. But if you really want to make the big bucks, you're going to turn that upside down.
Wow, I actually not. I knew this episode was going to be freaking awesome, but I did not expect it to be this good. So guys, 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall. Get it at perrymarshall.com if you want to get it for a penny plus shipping and handling. Or you can go on amazon.com, get it on Kindle like I did. Either way, get the book, apply it everywhere. I don't like your business, list building, traffic, relationships. It applies to absolutely every freaking thing in your life. Perry, truly honored and really happy that you found the time to sit down with me and rap about this stuff. Any last piece of advice for our list builders?
Well, in the book, we've got some really nice bonuses that, so you buy the book and you crack it open and there's a website access that you get. One of the things you'll get with the book is a personal lesson in how I groom my email list. I've got people now who've been on my email list for 15 years, if you can believe it. Now, that's a long time, and they still read my emails. In fact, a frequent thing that I hear when I meet people in person is they'll say to me, I've been on every guru's listing, like you and these one or two other guys are the only ones left. I eliminated everybody else. Well, I really take good care of my email list. And what you'll see when you subscribe to the book bonuses is the art. I call it the maze. I call it building the maze. And we build our email system to respond to what people respond to and to not send them what they don't respond to. And so it naturally, organically goes in the direction where people want to go. And we train people to addictively read our emails. And a lot of it is because we show respect for our customers. We know we don't take them for granted. We don't just look at them like walking ATM machines. And so I think that's something that comes with the book that you'll really appreciate.
Sweet. Guys, get on the list, study Perry. Find his 20% and model that as fast as you can possibly do it. So, Perry, thanks again for being here.
Igor, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on List Building Lifestyle. It's an honor.
Well, it was an honor hosting you, and hopefully it's not the last time you're coming down to share some value.
All right. Thank you much.
So, list builders, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the List Building Lifestyle. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to never miss an episode. Because who knows, just one conversion tactic we share on the show might double your list and double your business. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. And don't forget to claim your complimentary copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. This is Igor Kheifets, and until next time we talk, have a good one.
This is the podcastfactory.com.